level, that will take you to the next level again. You do it again. So you can practice this thing for both papers, paper 1 and paper 2. You can be able to set your target very easy and achieve them if ever you are using this strategy to push yourself to next level in economics. And then this one, according to the examination guidelines of 2021, this is the structure of our papers. But for now, we'll mainly focus on paper 1, which is the term 1 content for now. That was covered, and that will appear in our June examination on the 1st. So we have circular flow that was covered, business cycles was covered, public sector was covered, the foreign exchange market was also covered. So in your paper 1 that is coming next week, you can expect all of these topics: circular flow, business cycles, public sector, and foreign exchange markets. This is what you can expect as we are preparing for your examination that is coming. So ensure that you do these topics thoroughly. That will guide you. Do not overlap to economic pursuit, because as for this examination, this is not the part of our scope. So the scope ends in the macroeconomics. So these are the details on the question paper. So I believe you already know this. I will simply highlight. Each question paper is having 150 marks. So paper 1 and paper 2, each of them is 150 marks. Grade 12 economics, sorry about this, there was a technical error. So I believe now it's been resolved. So let's go on. Like I've said, we are doing macroeconomics. We are doing all topics that we covered in term 1. So those topics include the circular flow, business cycles, public sector, and the foreign exchange market. So please join me. Let's see what we have for you here. Lesson objectives are as follows. This presentation is aiming at training you on how to attempt to answer all sections in the question paper. Also, it provides a review on macroeconomic essays, and then also emphasizes the most on question paper structure. So we'll be giving you the layout of the question paper and what you can expect in our upcoming examination, which will be written the first paper on the 1st of June. So it is believed that you all know macroeconomics topic that have been taught. So here, simply, this is just the training on how you can achieve your target. If you set your target as a learner for economics, you must always follow this structure. Be aware that if you get from 0 to 44 over 150, that is level 1. You have not hit level 2. And then anything from 45 out of 150 will be giving you, let's say 45 is giving you 30%. So from 45, we have 30%, and then from there we add 15 marks. If we add 15 marks from 45, it takes us straight to 60. To 60 over 150. 60 over 150 is giving you 40%. It's giving you 40%, which is your level 3. So it's 45 plus 15 is give us 60. That is 40% for you. So always plan around it. Add your 15 on top of what you have achieved to move to the next level. And then we also say now from there, we add 15. So 60 plus 15, we go straight to 75. So 75 is a half of 150, which is giving us 50% square. That is level 4 for you. So if you want to move to level 5, you need to add 15. So you will say 75 plus 15, you go straight to 90. So 75 plus 15, you go straight to 90 over 150. That will be giving you 60% square. So having 60%, if you want to achieve the next level on the following assessment, you simply add 15 on this 90 over 150. If you add 15, you get straight to 105, which gives you 70%, because 105 over 150 gives you straight 70%. So let's say you want to achieve distinction. What should you do? You must add 15 from this 105. As you add 15 from this 105, you go straight to 80%, because it will be 120 over 150, which is the distinction for you. That is level 7. So be aware, anything above 120 over 150 is a distinction. And then this is the question paper structure. For now, we'll only focus on this, which is term 1, because we are still going to do the preparation for term 2. So for term 1, this is the content that was covered, and this content will appear in your paper 1. Meaning economic pursuit will not appear in this upcoming examination that will be written in paper 1. So you can only expect circular flow, business cycles, public sector, and the foreign exchange markets. These are only topics that will appear in your question paper number 1, that will be written on the 1st of June. So play around this, ensure that you don't overlap for paper 1. You cannot do this. You cannot do this micro for paper 1. You do macro for paper 1, and then we'll be doing micro for paper 2, but that will also be explained. For paper 1, these are still some topics, but for this assessment that will be written next week, we don't consider these topics for economic pursuit. They are not covered. They will be covered next in the preparatory examination. Only these 4 will appear. So as you prepare yourself, only do macroeconomics for your paper 1 that is written on the 1st of June. And then this is just the layout of the question paper again. So our question paper consists of 150 marks. Each paper is 2 hours. So we are given only 2 hours to complete the question paper. And then the paper consists of 6 questions divided into 3 sections. So we have section A, which is having question 1. Question 1 is compulsory. That's why you get 30 marks. And then we have section B, which consists of 3 questions. These 3 questions, we have question 2, question 3, and question 4. That's why you have a choice. You have to choose 2 of those 4 given questions. And then we have section C. Our section C is having only 2 questions. In those 2 questions, you only choose 1 to answer. Then you will be having 150 marks. And then the above papers normally they are not written on the same day. They are written on separate days. And then detailed requirements on each section per question paper are indicated. So let's go on. So we have section A that is compulsory. The layout of the section A, you must be aware of it. We have multiple choice items. That is the lower order, where you are given the description or the statement as well as 4 options, where you just have to choose 1 correct letter out of those 4 options. It gives you 16 marks. And then we have 1.2, which is mentioned items, column A and column B. In there, we are given column A and column B. You need to connect and relate those concepts to descriptions. And then that will be giving you 8 marks. Each response is 1 mark, but here above, each response is 2 marks. And then the third one, which is still the lower order, we have descriptions where you have to provide the concept or the term. We are given the definition or the description, you provide the relevant concept. So you have up to 6. Then in that case, each of them is 1 mark, and then you get 6 marks. All in all, you are getting 30 marks out of 150 as for your question paper. Remember, abbreviations are not allowed, they are not accepted. You cannot use abbreviations as you respond to your question paper in this case. Acronyms and abbreviations, you use full words in there if you answer in 1.3 section. And then this is the strategy on how you can score more marks in section A. Multiple choice firstly. You need to read your statement with understanding and have an answer in your mind. Thereafter, you can look for that answer within the given options. As you read the statement to understand and try to provoke your mind to give you the answer before you look for the option. If you can do that, it will be very easy for you to simply go down and grab the correct answer. Or it will always be easy for you to do so if ever you read the statement with understanding. But if you simply look for the option without understanding the statement, you will be choosing the wrong answer and you forfeit marks in there. Remember, each and every mark counts. Be precise when choosing an answer, because when between a given options, one answer is correct and one is very close, as they belong in the same context. So given these four options, there's one answer that is purely correct, and other answer is relative, and others are simply wrong. Be aware of that. That's why you need to understand the statement thoroughly before you choose the correct answer. Do not guess an answer. Contextualize, classify given options to the statement. If you are given those options, ensure that you understand the statement and then contextualize the statement, link it to those given options, and find the option that is very much correct in there. Do not guess, because if you guess between given four options, you might be wrong totally. You can even get 0/16 in 1.1. Do not put two options next to a number. They will both be marked wrong. So simply provide one correct option. Do not give two options. Say maybe you say A or B or A stroke B. That is totally wrong. You need to provide the one answer that is correct. Do not leave anything unattended. Provide all answers. Avoid leaving spaces in there. Provide answers. Ensure that you look for the answer that is relevant and provide the answer, because you might be forfeiting marks. In case you find that the answer really you don't understand which answer is correct, then you can try to find the related response in there or related option in there and provide it. But do not leave anything unattended. At the same time, do not just come and guess answers. Ensure that you analyze everything and then you get the answer correct. Then total marks on this section will be giving you about 16 marks. And then we continue with matching. We are within 1.2 now, matching items where you are given the table of column A and column B. You need to know descriptions for column A before searching for corresponding options. This allows you to simply pick the correct answer in the column B. So as we are given column A option, or concept, you must know how to define it. You must know the theory around it, so that if you look for the answer, you simply go in there and pick the answer. Avoid guessing in there, because if you guess the answer, you might find yourself getting one answer wrong. It means you are getting two answers wrong in there, because if you choose the answer in 1.2.1, which belongs to 1.2.3, that means both options now are wrong, because 1.2.3 will be fitting the wrong answer in there. So ensure that you analyze thoroughly and use what we call elimination method. If we talk of elimination method, you need to start with what you know, and then after that, what you are not sure about, you can just play around it then at the later stage after completing what you know. Avoid guessing the answer without looking at answers that you already know in there. Always start with the answers you know they are correct, because if not, getting one option wrong means getting two options wrong. You might be unlucky to say that we are choosing the option that belongs to the particular answer. In that case, you will find yourself wrong in two in one. Use the elimination method. Eliminate answers you know, and then after, concentrate on the remaining options. Ensure that you eliminate. Start with what you know. After that, you can check what you don't know or what you don't understand, and try to create some links between the concept and the given statement in there. Contextualize remaining options to a column A. In case you find yourself that it is difficult to get the answer, contextualize those remaining options. Maybe after you have answered what you know, you will be remaining with two answers, two options unanswered. Then you can look around there and try to discover which one is really correct. But if you try to come in and guess, you can get 0. Do not leave anything unattended. Ensure that no spaces are left. Given 8 options, give all 8 letters that are required. That will be giving you 8 marks. Remember, every mark is very important here. Description. This is 1.3. Most of you find this one difficult, but it's very easy because you are having the mind gap. That is very important for you to study all concepts, because at the beginning of each chapter, there are some concept or description that we need to follow, study them, practice them in definitions. Then it can be easy for you to answer 1.3 for giving the concept or the term. Know your terminology per topic and per chapter. It is very important here that you know your terminology, know your terms in there, know the concepts that are related to each chapter. If you are doing circular flow, know all concepts that are related to the circular flow. If you are doing public sector, know all concepts for the public sector, because if they set the question paper, they will be picking from there. And then if it's a business site, know all of those definitions. If it's the foreign exchange market, know all of those definitions. It will be easy for you to get responses for this 1.3. Use mind the gap definitions given at the beginning of each topic. So at the beginning of each topic in the mind the gap, there are definitions. Use them, study them, practice, do those ongoing tests, assess yourself on definitions. It will be easy for you to get here and answer very much correct. Do weekly definition tests to improve your performance in section A. Assess yourself, do weekly definition tests per topic. That will allow you to be very much geared up for 1.3. You will be able to grab these 6 marks. And then do not use abbreviations and acronyms when providing concepts. So, like I said before, they are not allowed. Abbreviations are not taken, acronyms are not taken. You will be wrong. Even if, let's say the definition is for GDP, you simply say GDP, not saying gross domestic product. You will be wrong by saying GDP, because GDP is not allowed as a part of responses in here. You only have to write the gross domestic product. Do not leave anything unattended. Normally, when we come across spaces in this section, do not leave anything unattended. Ensure that you provide full answers as required. And then section B layout. So in section B, you answer 2 questions in the section. The total mark is 80 because each question is 40 marks, 40 marks. So we have question 2, and then one question. So we have question 2 up to question 4, I mean. And then there are 3 questions in section B. And then 1 question per main topic and 1 combination questions between the 2 main topics. So it takes 50-50. Normally in the open paper where we have the whole content, you will be having macroeconomics, question number 2, question 3 is pursuit, question 4 is the combination. So 2.1. Now, these are the short questions, which is the lower order for you, where you just have to remember and provide the answer. 2.1.1, we talk about lower order. 2 items, name 2 of the following, or mention 2 reasons for the business cycle, mention 2 leakages in the open economy, etc. That's when you simply provide. You just have to remember the answer and provide it. So it's a lower order. Don't leave this. These are 3 marks for you. And then 2.1.2 is a weekly order. 1 item. So, e.g., how, what, and what, an application type question. This is when you apply. You need to be a little bit critical to respond. You link options, you apply a given option. For instance, how can the increase in tax affect consumer spending? Those are types of questions that you can expect in 2.1.2. So you just have to apply now in there. And then it is very important that you are able to list, be able to apply, and understand the question before attempting to answer. This is very important. You cannot just answer this 2.1.2 without understanding. You need to understand the question before you answer, because this is when you link and apply. And then section B layout continues. 2.2 and 2.3. These are the data response questions. This is when you will be given either the extract, the cartoon, and the table for numbers, the graph, etc., where you need to interpret the given information first before you attempt to look at questions. So most of you make a mistake here. Given this kind of the question in a form of data response, you simply go to questions. You can't do that. You need to analyze the given data response, underline where necessary, give some answers where there are question marks. Then when you go to questions, you simply grab your answers that you have mentioned above, because mostly some of them, whatever that will be annotating in there is a part of questions. So in here, we have data response question, which is a weekly order, e.g., study the following graph, cartoon, table, extract, real data, and answer the question that follow. So in here, each of them is 10 marks. The whole data response questions will be about 10 marks. So if you are counting different questions, since we are answering only 2 questions in this section B, it will be out of the 20 marks. Items in the data response question must be scaffolded from easy to the difficult. So normally the first two answers, they are coming from the given data response. So that's when you mention or identify in there. So it's a lower order than the next one, which can be 2.3. 2.2.3, and then 2.3.3. That's when you define the concept or describe the concept. Then from there, you start to a little bit apply again. The answers to the first two questions, which is 1 mark, may appear in the given data. And then data response questions give a context on one aspect to be assessed, and answers would not be necessarily appear in the data. So avoid, when we are giving data response, always avoid to simply try to answer using the data response. Picking paragraphs and then writing them down, you will be wrong. Mainly, 99.9% answers from 2.2.1 and 2.2.2. Those are answers that can be found. 3.3.1, 3.2.1, 3.2.2. Those are the ones that you normally come across them in there. You can pick or identify, but from the definition, you need to use your content knowledge going down where you need to apply. So avoid writing the paragraph from the point of definition or description when you have to describe going down. Those answers will not be correct. You need to apply in there, but follow your questions with understanding before you attempt to answer. And then section B continues. 2.4. In this case, we talk about the middle order response, but it is the content knowledge. So this is the content that can be found in your textbook. This information here, you can simply peruse your book and discover this content in there. So there's nothing critical about it. It is the matter of discussing the information that is required from your own notes that were given by your educator. So single question middle order, e.g. explain, discuss, distinguish, or differentiate between. Draw a correct level graph, and explain. Use the given graph and explain. So in there, the information that you provide is in your textbook, is from your notes. And then in 2.5, this one is the higher order question, of which is very difficult to discover this information from the content that is taught in class. That's when you need to evaluate and relate. That's when you apply economics into the real world now. That's when you link items here, then you can be able to respond. For instance, we can say under public sector, how can the government improve service delivery in South Africa? So in there, you check a means that can be used to improve service delivery, or evaluate effectiveness of public sector on providing public services in the economy. In there, you need to evaluate. If you are evaluating, you assess the current situation in that particular area, and then you give your own perception and your own understanding of the situation. So you can try now to be deliberate to say the government has been successful or have not been successful. You give your own reasons. That means 2.5 or in 2.5, you don't necessarily pick the answer from the giving information in terms of notes. You need to be very critical. You need to link the content into the real world and then discover your answers. So the understanding of the content is very much important in here because it provokes the critical thinking. Also, it needs you to be well informed about the current economic condition and the current economic climate. So it is very important that if you are doing economics, you get to be exposed on economic issues that go on within the society. Be able to link the stuff so that you can be able to answer the 2.5 question. It's all about 8 marks, and then also 2.4 is about 8 marks. So like I said, this information cannot necessarily be found in the textbook. It needs you to think critically. It needs you to use your own understanding. It needs you to be able to evaluate and assess the situation, also provide a solution of some sort in a particular issue. And then we continue. With regard to what, how, and why questions, learners must be guided by the mark allocation. So it is very important that in this case, you look at the mark allocation before you respond. At times, it will be 2 marks, meaning you provide one answer in a full sentence, which is out of 2 marks. At times, it will be 4 marks. That means you provide 2 answers in full sentences, for which each of them is 2 marks. Ensure if it's 8 marks, ensure that when you answer in full sentences, but you use point forms. So how many points should you provide? The minimum of 4 points. Always start with points that you are sure they are correct as you go down. Avoid writing in paragraph, because sometimes you might be providing an answer or the whole paragraph as one. Why there are so many answers in there. Try to separate your answers or your points, but in full sentences. And then the why question, or e.g. why 2 marks will require 1 discussion point, like I said. Why 8 marks 8 marks, which means 3 to 4 answers in discussion. So in this case, if it's 4 full sentences, each answer you have provided in full discussion is out of how many marks? Is out of 2 marks. But if it's 3, that means we have provided some examples in there that will be able to take you up to 8 marks. Responses must give effect to the contextual demands of the question. You need to contextualize the given issue and think critically, then you can respond. Then section D will be giving you 40 marks. So this is the example of data response taken from May-June examination 2018. So firstly, you are given the extract. Study the extract below and answer questions that follow. So the balance of payments, current account improves. Already you know that in this case, we are all under the foreign exchange market. South Africa's current account deficit narrowed in the 4th quarter last year. It is the first time it reached the level of 1.7% of the GDP in nearly 6 years. Then you underline the basic information. And then also you continue the improvement in the trade balance intrinsic impacted positively on the current account. The trade balance improved from deficit of 38 billion in 2015 to surplus of 15 billion in 2016. This resulted in the balance of payments deficit being reduced from 166 billion to 76 billion in 2016. So we have underlined the whole information. Don't forget to check the source adapted from News 24 August 2017. Then you can try to check questions in there, because we have underlined some of these things that we have underlined. They are the part of questions and part of answers in there. According to the extract above, what was the deficit in the balance of payments? It has been underlined. And then in the extract above, identify the term that calculate the differences between goods imported and goods exported. And then it's also in here. And then we continue now. The next question cannot be found, or the answer of the next question cannot be found in our extract. Briefly describe the term balance of payment. Now you can see that this definition now is not anywhere around the given extract. So you need to use your content knowledge now. Avoid picking information from the extract and think you have a definition there. It will be wrong. Simply use your content knowledge in 4.2.3. In that case, anything 2.3 will be for you to use content knowledge. What is the significance of the balance of payment on the current account? The answer cannot be found in the above given information. You need to use your content knowledge. Again, link. How can the surplus on the balance of payments affect the South African economy? Again, in this case, you need to use your content knowledge and link, because the answer cannot be found in the given extract. So it's very important that you keep it in your mind. You might find it in the given information on the extract. You can find it, but going down, you need to use your content knowledge. It is very important that you understand that, avoiding writing paragraphs that are sourced from the given data response or given extract in these questions. You will be totally wrong in most cases. 99.9% you will be wrong. According to the extract, what was the deficit? It is 76 billion. And then identify the term that calculate the difference between goods imported and goods exported, the balance of trade. And then briefly describe the concept or the term balance of payment. So systematic record of all transactions between one country and another country over a particular period. So there was no such in the definition. In the given extract or data response. So that means now you are required to use your content knowledge. Any related and correct answer or relevant answer about the definition will be marked correct. What is the significance of the balance of payment on the current account? This response is not found in there. Even if you try to copy, you will be wrong. It gives an indication whether the country is living within the means, within the means, and then indicates a surplus or a deficit. Such was not indicated in there. So you need to try and use your own understanding of the content to achieve these 2 marks. How can the surplus on the balance of payments affect the South African economy positively? Then you focus on the positive side. The surplus on the balance of payments can affect the economy positively by reaching the production potential of the country, building the reserve of the country due to surplus, investing more in infrastructure, increasing value of the rand, attracting more foreign direct investment, reducing tax burden due to less money borrowed to pay off public debts, stimulating economic growth and create job opportunities. None of this was in the extract. So avoid copying answers from the given extract and think they will be correct, they will be wrong. How to achieve more marks in section B? So it's a strategy now. 2.4, 3.4, and 4.4. These are 8 marks questions. Know your content knowledge, because these questions are just the content knowledge which is available in all of your learning aids. So ensure that you know your notes, know your textbooks to answer all of these questions. There is nothing critical about these questions. They are simply a source from your own textbook and your own notes that you use in daily basis. Be smart when answering. Use point form, but answer in full sentences. Give the minimum of 4 full sentences in order to get full marks in there. 2.5, 3.5, 4.5 questions, that's a higher order. Be able to apply the content into the real world. It is very important that you apply, because some questions will be coming to say, evaluate the failure and the success. How effective have been? Why should the government do so and so? So it is very important that you are able to apply your content knowledge into the real world now. Critical thinking is the key to answer this question, since it needs analysis, evaluation, and application of content and current economic issues. So it's very important that you are able to analyze, evaluate, and apply the knowledge you have about the topic. Then you can answer the question and get it correct. The Nifty order 4.4, for instance, briefly discuss exchange rate stability and price stability as macroeconomics objectives. So this is 4.4, where you have to provide information from your textbook and or from your notes. Exchange rate stability, depreciation and appreciation of the currency create uncertainty for producers and traders and should therefore be limited. The government should manage economy through monetary and fiscal policy, so that the exchange rate remains relatively stable as long as possible. South Africa pursues stable exchange rate to attract foreign capital. So this is just the content knowledge. This is found from your notes or from your textbook. So there's nothing critical. You simply provide the content. Price stability. In mixed economy, prices fluctuate as demand and supply change. Frequent and dramatic changes in prices affect economic growth and employment. The government attempts to guard against price instability. In South Africa, price stability means an inflation rate is between 3 to 6%. Stable prices enable firms and households to predict income and expenditure. Investor confidence is boosted by a stable price and attract foreign indirect investment. So in this case, this information is also found from your notes. So you just have to start your notes and come to deliver. There's nothing critical about this. And then 4.4 again, the nuclear order. Explain changes in demand and interest rate as means to correct the balance of payments disequilibrium. This is found also under our balance of payment correction of BOP disequilibrium. So the content is there, you provide it back as it is. Change in demand. Long-term policies include export promotion, such as the government incentive applied to encourage production of goods that can be exported and limit imports. Import substitution can be applied where government incentive include producing goods domestically rather than importing them. E.g., European governments pay subsidies for farmers to ensure a proactive advantage over developing countries where this practice is not followed. So this information is discovered from the content, so there's nothing critical. You must study it and bring it back here as you answer the question. Interest rate. Domestic demand on imports will decrease if interest rates increase. It is in there, it is found even in the minor curve. High interest rates will attract foreign investments to South Africa, which will improve the balance of payments. So the information is found in the textbook. So it's a matter of you having your content knowledge. Or a maximum of 4 marks can be allocated for a listing of facts. If you list facts without any explanation, you will be getting the maximum of 4 marks. and then the middle order. Calculate the change in aggregate income. If there is an injection of 20 billion in the economy with the marginal propensity to save MPC being 0.3, and show how the multiplier effect could influence the government to create more jobs. Show all calculations. So the main thing here is to calculate the value of the multiplier first, which we know that it will always be 1 over 1 minus 1 over MPC. If we are given the value of MPC, then you will be saying 1 over 0.3. 1 over 0.3 is 3.3. So normally it will be 3.3. There are so many things that will come in there. And then the change in national income will be 20 billion times 3.3. Remember, you're giving 20 billion in there, and that 20 billion must be multiplied by the multiplier. And then you get your 63.6 or 67 billion rands, maximum of 4 marks. And then you explain how will it affect job creation. Job created, there will be, there will be result in more income and spending in the economy, which will lead to even more jobs being created. Knock-off effect. And then government can also decrease taxation, putting more money in the pockets of the consumer. The extra money will be spent by the consumer, leading to increase in employment. Government can decrease company taxes that might lead to increased investment by businesses focusing on labor-intensive production methods that give you 4 marks. Then you achieve your 8 marks. So this was just the middle order. Then the higher order example. How can the change in terms of trade influence South African economy? We remember TOTs or terms of trade within the foreign exchange market. An improvement in terms of trade comes as a result of the increase in export prices or the decrease in import prices. It is in there. This one, you come across it in explanation as a part of the critical. It is not easily found in there. A part of it can be in the textbook, but critically so, not easily found. So you need to be very careful if you are looking for this kind of the response in your textbook. Some of them, or most of them, are not there. You need to apply as you understand the terms of trade. Then you apply them in practice, you can be able to answer or to provide this response. An increase in export prices would increase economic welfare in the short term, and more revenue is earned with the same or less expenditure on on imports. A decrease in import prices would result in the less expenditure or less payment for imports in the short term. Higher export earnings and lower import payments may reduce balance of payment deficits in the short term. Less resources will be used to produce exports to pay for imports. Demand for South African export may decrease in the long run due to higher prices. So this is one of examples for higher order question that you need to answer if you come across in 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5 questions. Higher order continues in here. A decrease in terms of trade comes as a result of decrease in export prices and increase in import prices. A decrease in export prices would decrease economic welfare in the short term as less revenue is earned as a part of export earnings. And an increase in import prices would result to more expenditure on or more payment on imports in the short term. Lower export earnings and higher import payments may increase in the balance of payment deficit in the short term. More resources will be used to produce export to pay for imports, and demand for South African export may increase in the long run due to lower prices because our terms of trade have been lowered. And then the essay structure. So you have been shown how to respond in a lower order and middle order, including higher order in your section B. So this is the essay structure where you must have introduction. Remember, in the introduction, that's when you try to define the concept related to the content that has been asked in your essay. It provides you with the minimum of 2 marks. Do not repeat any part of the introduction in the body. So whatever that you have used to introduce should not be repeated in the body of your essay. Then we continue with the essay structure. So in the body in there, that's when you deal with your main part. You have your main part where you discuss out of 26 marks. That's when you discuss your content knowledge deeply. You provide the full information necessary based on the given content or given question which is related to the content. So here, a maximum of 8 marks may be allocated for headings, including examples. That is a part of the lower order in your essay. And then the 18 marks now will be for the content delivered, where you discuss the concept very much deep to get your marks. Additional part, if you go straight to additional part, that is the higher order where you critically discuss, evaluate, calculate, debate, deduce, compare, distinguish, interpret. Those are part of the how question. Suggest, consult the graph, the practice procedure, maybe. So in this case, this is when you critically answer the question. The answer cannot be found in the textbook. You need to understand the content, relate the question to the particular content, then answer the question, ensure that to provide answers accordingly. If you list, you can get maximum of 2 marks. So the additional part will give you about 10 marks in your essay. We continue. Conclusion. This is when now you provide the higher order response that have not been mentioned in either your introduction, the body, or main part and additional part. So here, you provide the brief summary of what has been discussed without repeating facts that are already mentioned. You provide the opinion on how something can be improved or how something can be done. Additional supporting information to strengthen the discussion or analysis. Contradictory viewpoint with motivation, if required, recommendations. Always try to be critical, try to be authentic as you answer here in the conclusion. Do not repeat information that has been mentioned in the body of your essay or introduction of your essay. That will be giving you the maximum of 2 marks, which will be give you all in all 40 marks for your essay. So principle that you should follow to write essay, very easy. Arrange your essay in subheadings. So always ensure that you use subheadings to respond to your essay. Use point form rather than paragraphs when writing your essay. Ensure that you use point forms. You provide the subheading, then you discuss the subheading in point forms, but in full sentences. Remember the IMAC structure, which is introduction, main part, additional part, as well as conclusion as you write your essay. Remember 8:18 principle in the main part for listing subheadings and provision of examples. The maximum of 8 marks is allocated, and then for the content delivery, you will be writing for 18 marks. The content knowledge and the depth discussion in the concept has the maximum of 18 marks, like I've mentioned before. And then we continue with the structure. Be aware that listing on the additional part has a minimum of 2 marks. You must write your answers in full sentences, not just list, because if you are doing so, your answers can be cleared and you will be given 2 marks. Ensure that responses you provide are enough to score maximum marks, of which is 10 marks. And then arrange your essay in point form. It's a repeat. Your conclusion should not have any repetition of either introduction, main part, or additional part. But it should include both as you answer critically. But the content provided must not come as it is. Critically, that's when you provide your own viewpoint and you become more authentic. Then you can talk about either both main part and additional part, or you pick one, but it's always advisable for you to answer based on the 2 if you conclude your essay. Essay conclusion must be the higher order response. And then answer the questions. Choose questions that you know best to achieve maximum marks. Remember, you are given some options in there, especially in the section C. We are given two essays. Given those 2 essays, you need to choose the essay that you believe will give you maximum marks or will give you enough marks for you to pass. Answer in full sentences where explanation, description, and definition is required. Give answers according to mark allocation. Do not give the paragraph of maybe 10 sentences in 2 marks. You are wasting your time. Ensure that if it's 2 marks, you provide the full sentence in there. That is, it's very much authentic, or that is having very much essence to save time. Do not simply answer give much of sentence and paragraphs while the mark is only for 4. Always provide marks provide answer according to mark allocation. Also avoid, if it's 10 marks additional part, you provide 1 sentence. That is wrong. Ensure that you provide at least the minimum of 4 sentences in full, and then that can allow you to achieve maximum marks. Always start with the response that you are sure that they will give you credit. Always start with where you have most of the confidence. Do not use abbreviations in section in 1.3. And then read questions with understanding before attempting to answer. Read data response with understanding before answering any question that is coming. If instructed to draw the graph, remember to explain the graph. And also remember that each and every graph is having its own name. So provide the heading for the graph, then draw the graph, label your graph, and also ensure that you give explanation for your graph, which is known as interpretation. Use point form to answer your discussion questions. Do not simply use paragraphs. Give the relevant time to section A. It contributes to 20% on the entire paper. So ensure that you give it time. Avoid writing section A for 5 minutes, because in that case you are undermining your section A. As you do so, you will be rushing, failing section A, only to find that you are rushing to section C, while section C will simply knock you down. Ensure that to give each section the respect it deserves, because all these marks are important. Not to say you believe that the marks of the essay are important than the marks of section A. You need to spend your time by ensuring that you achieve section A marks, because they will be giving you confidence. As you go forward, you go with high confidence and you answer your section B and section C. But do not invest the most in section C by neglecting section A, because all of these marks are important. Mostly important, section B is all about 80 marks. So if you choose to go for section A the most and neglect section B questions, you will be forfeiting marks, because it's for 80 marks. It contributes the most, above 50% in your question paper. So treat all of these sections with respect, because they all have marks and every mark is important for you. Do not specialize to say you want to answer an essay, then you are done. How about you answer accordingly? Because section A is important. That 30 marks can do a lot for you to achieve your target. That 80 marks for section B can do a lot. You can get 40 marks in section C, only to find that you have wrong section A and section B. Then you fail your question, the entire of your paper. So ensure that you treat all of these sections with the respect, because they all have marks that are necessary for you to achieve your target. I know the perception of you focusing on section C, neglecting section A. It is very important that you treat them with respect, because those marks are all important for you. So the term 1 review, as we review term 1, so this is the way to go. Note the following in your topic number 1. 4 participants in the circular flow, 3 leakages in the circular flow as the open economy, remember? 3 injections in the circular flow as for open economy. Know your markets in the open economy as a circular flow. Know national account aggregates, and also you need to know your multiplier. It is very important that you know your multiplier, because more often it comes in your question paper. So participants, remember, they are as follows. We have households, firms of businesses, the government, and the foreign sector. So with these given participants, you can have a lower order, middle order, and a higher order. In lower order, you can mention list any 2 participants in the open economy, or any 2 participants in the closed economy, in the circular flow. And then you go to the middle order. Maybe in this case, you start to discuss interaction between firms and household, interaction between government and firms, interaction between firms and the foreign sector. That is the middle order, because the information can be found in the textbook. And then there's nothing critical about this. And then you go to the higher order. This is when now you check the contribution of each of them. For instance, how do households contribute on building the economy? And then how can firms effectively contribute on building South African economy? Or evaluate the impact of firms in South African economy. So, also we can go to the foreign sector. How can the foreign sector contribute on building South African economy? Those are the questions. So we develop from lower order to the higher order on the same topic. You need always to try to do that, so that any kind of the question coming on the participants, you can simply round it off and get the correct answer. So how can you win in this? Be able to list all circular flow participants in both closed and open economy. Avoid confusing participants to markets. That is one issue that we come across. You normally confuse participants to what? To markets. If you are required to mention participants, you list markets. You are required to list markets, you list participants. Always ensure that you do what is supposed to be done. Do not confuse yourself. And the thing about this is that when you read your question statement, you get an early excitement that makes you to simply commit these mistakes. The early excitement is very much unnecessary. Ensure that you read the question with understanding. Inhale it and answer the question. Know the interaction between participants is very important, because you can come across it. Be able to discuss the economic importance of each participant in the economy, at least for 10 marks, or the economic contribution. Know the interaction between participants. It's a repeat of that. And then the circular flow again, we come here, we talk about the multiplier, which is, before multiplier, we talk about injections and leakages in here. So about injections, remember, known to list injections, we talk about investment spending, government spending, and payment for exports. It's I, G, and X. The formula will say J equals to I plus G plus X, which is injection. Remember, injections are always positive because as much as they occur or they prevail, there will be positive growth in the economy. And then remember the effect, if ever injections are more than leakages, economy will increase. If injections are less than leakages, economy decrease. And then if they are equal, we have economic equilibrium. Remember, leakages, listing them savings, taxation, and payment for import. Know the formula L equals to S plus T plus M. And then leakages are always negative. Put your focus on relevant concept, interaction between participants, make flows, market flows, injections, leakages, and equilibrium in the economy. The effect of leakages. Remember, leakage refers to withdrawal of money from the economy, and then the introduction of leakages will always reduce or decrease the economy. Taxation will always reduce the income, the personal income by people. So those people will find themselves having less disposable income, then they spend less. And then VAT, if ever it's imposed, spending by people will be reduced and profits by businesses. Savings will always reduce consumer spending. If money is saved, it's not available in circulation. Therefore, that will lead to economy being affected negatively. Import reduce domestic income. And also, if the money is flowing out to pay for import, that will mean consumers are not demanding goods that are produced locally. That is bad for the economy. And then injections always increase the economy of the country. If ever they increase, there will be increase in national income and economic growth. If injections are more than leakages, the economy will always increase. So injections formula, like it's been mentioned, J equals to I plus G plus X. And then investment spending will always increase national income because it's more like an injection. The money is injected into the economy. Or if the government increases spending, there will be more money circulating, which will create more job opportunities and increase aggregate demand in the economy. Also, and then we check the issue of exports. If ever exports are increasing, there will be more welfare gain and more export earnings. In that case, that will be good for the economy because the money might be flowing back into South Africa in a form of foreign currency and be injected back to create more jobs and improve infrastructure in the economy. So you know markets, avoid confusing markets to participants. We have the factor market, product market or goods market, financial market, and the foreign exchange market. It is very important that you know them and discuss them. Remember, this is a part of our essay in the macroeconomics. So know your market in discussion. So we'll simply give some hints on the factor markets. We know that this is where factors of production are traded. And then these factors of production include natural resources, capital, labor, and entrepreneurship. All of them are traded in the factor market. So this kind of market is also known as a resource market or inputs market because main resources or inputs are found in this kind of the market. Remember that it is very important because no production can occur without the factor market. All four factors of production are given remunerations. You know that wages and salaries for labor, profit for entrepreneurship, rent for land or for land or natural resource, as well as interest on capital. And then the product market, which is also known as goods market. This is market where goods are traded. We can talk about final goods and services, intermediate goods, as well as capital goods that are found in the product markets. So the market is subdivided into what? Into a consumer goods market, capital goods market, as well as services market. So we know that consumer goods market is where we find the likes of durable consumer goods, semi-durable consumer goods, non-durable consumer goods. And then also in consumer goods market, we come across intermediate goods that are used by the household to prepare their food or their stuff. Capital goods market, that's where we find the likes of machinery and equipment that are used by producers to produce goods and services. Services market provides services such as repairs, bringing services, insurance services, marketing, etc. There are so many services that are found in the services market. And then the financial market, this is the market where financial transactions or securities are traded. Transactions occur here that are based on finance, and then securities are traded in this market. So financial market, we know it's subdivided into two. We have the capital market, we have the money market. So the money market is controlled by the South African Reserve Bank, while the capital market is controlled by who? By Johannesburg Security Exchange. The money market is only for short-term loans and deposits within the financial institutions, while the capital market is only for long-term deposits and loans within the financial market. So it's more like mortgage bonds and also the insurance services. Money market is controlled by JSE, like I've said before. The foreign exchange market. Remember, this is the market where the different world currencies are exchanged to one another. And then businesses buy foreign currency to pay for their imported goods and services, while consumers also buy the currency to pay for imported goods and services. In South Africa, this transaction takes place in commercial banks. So the biggest foreign exchange markets are in London, New York, and Tokyo. South African rand is freely traded within the foreign exchange market. And then these are the methods that are used to calculate GDP, namely the income method, production method, as well as expenditure method. You need to know them in detail. You must know the whole layout of the income method, where you talk about compensation for employees, you talk about net operating surplus, and then we talk about consumption on fixed capital. We add them all, we get what we call GDP at factor cost. And then we carry on GDP at factor cost, we add other taxes on production, subtract other subsidies on production. Then we get GDP at the basic price. We go on. We carry on the amount of GDP at basic price or GBA. Then what we add taxes on products and subtract subsidies on products. We get GDP at the market price. You go to the expenditure method. This is when we use the expenditure, where you use C plus I plus G plus X minus M, which is the final consumption spending by the household, final investment spending by businesses, the government spending. And then adding those three, and then if ever there was a residual or something that was added by mistake on the above or not added by mistake or omitted above, we add it as a part of the residual item. And then getting the sum in there, will be getting what? The gross domestic expenditure, which will require us to convert it to the GDP at market price using the expenditure method, where we will be adding what we call export or payment for export minus payment for import. Then we get GDP at the market price. The production method, this is when we use what you call primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. Add them together, you get what you call the gross value added, or that is GPA or GDP at basic price. And you carry on, you add taxes on products minus subsidies on products, you get a GDP at market price using what? The production method. Then this is the multiplier. So the multiplier refers, we know, to the small change in spending, which causes the increase in what we call national income. So in the multiplier, we say someone's spending becomes someone's income. Multiplier is informed by the likes of MPC and MPS. So these are two components that are used for us to derive the value of the multiplier. The value of the multiplier is used to calculate the multiplier effect, or the change in the aggregate national income. There is a negative relationship between MPS and the multiplier, but there's a positive relationship between the MPC and the multiplier. Because if MPS is increasing, there will be more multiplier value. If MPC is increasing, there will be more multiplier value. But if MPS is increasing, there will be less multiplier value, because most of income is channeled to savings. The introduction of taxes, savings, and imports will always decrease the value or the size of the multiplier. And then, how do we calculate the multiplier? We simply say the formulas. K equals to 1 over 1 minus MPC, or multiplier will be K equals to 1 over MPS, and then the multiplier effect will be multiplier effect equals to K times J, the value of the multiplier multiplied by injection. And then the next will be simply the example of the calculation. And then assume that MPC is 0.8, calculate the multiplier. So if the MPC is 0.8, that will mean we'll say 1 over 1 minus MPC, and then you substitute 1 over 1 minus 0.8, and then 1 over 0.2, you get your 5. This will be 4, will be out of 4 marks if required to calculate. So the value is 5. And then let's check if we are given the MPS. Assume that MPS is 0.4, calculate the value of the multiplier. So 1 over MPS, which means 1 over 0.4, it will give you 2.5. So in this case, it will be 2 marks, 2 marks, you get your 4 marks for the calculation. And then this side, you will be required to calculate the multiplier effect or the change in national income. Assume that the injection is 50 million. Calculate the change in the aggregate national income if MPC is 0.8. So we have already calculated here the value of 5, which is the multiplier value if MPC is 0.5. So what do we say? We say K times J, which will 5 million times, 5, which is the value of multiplier, times 50 million, which is given here. Then we get 250 million. So this is our response. Okay, and then be able to calculate the multiplier value using both formulas, 1 over 1 minus MPC or 1 over MPS, then be able to calculate the change in national income or the multiplier effect. And then autonomous spending, in this case, we talk about spending that is independent of income. So meaning people can even spend even they don't receive income because they might be using their savings. And then these are daily life savings which can be used at a later stage, such as pension savings or UIF. And then we continue. The level of consumption which is independent of income is known as autonomous spending. So that means our spending in there is not dependent most on income. People can use their savings. This signifies that consumers can spend even if they are no longer employed or they are no longer receiving income, if they were able to save before. Induced spending. So this is spending that is more dependent on income. So for someone to spend, the person should be using the income that has been reduced. So this one is not like the autonomous spending. Induced spending is likely to be in proportion with the change in income, which have an effect on the multiplier. If ever there's more income, induced spending might increase because income have increased. The increase in the level of consumption increases the value of the multiplier because that is constituted through MPC. The decrease in level of consumption decreases the value of the multiplier because that will mean more money is going to savings or taxes or paying for imports. And then the business cycle. So the part of the business cycle here, we have the monetary policy instrument. First, we talk about the repurchase rate, which is known as also the repo rate. The decrease in the repurchase rate results to commercial banks decreasing their prime rate. Remember, repurchase rate is the interest rate that is charged by South African Reserve Bank to commercial banks on their borrowings. Credit becomes expensive and becomes cheap and accessible if ever interest rate has been reduced. These increase aggregate demand in the economy and increase GDP as well as economic growth. The cash reserve or reserve requirement ratio or cash reserve requirement. So if ever it's being decreased, what will happen in the economy? A decrease in cash reserve increases liquidity in the banking sector. More liquidity tends commercial banks to give money for loans or create credit. Remember, creating credit is the main objective. So consumers are always tempted to spend if ever they happen to get money. So aggregate demand will increase and production levels will increase, which will lead to more GDP and economic growth if ever cash reserves have been reduced. Open market transaction. So in this case, we talk about bonds or financial securities. During bad economic conditions, the central bank can buy bonds from commercial banks. This increase the money supply in circulation, which will lead to more economic stimulation, because if Reserve Bank is buying bonds from commercial banks, that will give money away to the economy, and the money into the economy will result to banks creating credit and giving more loans to the society, which will lead to people spending. That will create economic upswing in the business side. And then we have moral suasion or moral pressure. This is when the credit control takes place. That's when Reserve Bank instructs commercial banks to react in the manner that is good for economic conditions. So poor economic conditions result to the central bank relaxing moral pressure or moral suasion or credit control. And then accessible credit makes consumers to spend money they don't even have. So they are always tempted to spend. And then that will lead to economic expansion. The foreign exchange markets, which is the topic number 4. So exchange rate at the rand at the mercy of the market. So you were given this information, and then what was required? You had to answer questions in there. Identify exchange rate system in the graph above. We talk about the free floating exchange rate. And then what was the original rand to the dollar before the demand for US dollar increase? It was 13 rand is to $1, meaning we're paying 13 rand to afford $1. Briefly describe the concept exchange rate. The rate at which one currency exchange to another currency, the value of the currency in terms of another country's currency. And then how has the increase in demand for US dollars affected the value of the rand? The value of rand have depreciated from 13 rand to 14 rand against the dollar, depreciated by 1 rand has weakened. And then what could South African Reserve Bank do to strengthen the value of the rand against the dollar? That is 4 marks. Reserve Bank could strengthen the value of rand by selling US dollars in reserve in in the foreign exchange market to create oversupply, selling gold reserves on the international market to create oversupply, obtaining assistance in financial support from International Monetary Fund or IMF fund to increase the inflow of the foreign exchange, and then increase the repo rate to stimulate investment by foreigners in South African economy. That was only for 4 months. And then the public sector. Remember, we have budgets, 3 of them. We have the main budget, we have MTF, medium-term budget expenditure framework, as well as medium-term budget policy statement. 3 of them. You must be able to distinguish between them. It is very important that you can give the difference between them. The main budget, it is a document with expected income and projected expenditure. It is the statement of the government planned expenditure for the anticipated income of the fiscal year. The budget is the most important item of the economic calendar. The main budget is read in the Parliament on the last week of February by the Minister of Finance, which is currently Mr. Enoch Godongwana. The government's financial year stretches from the 1st of April to the 31st of March on the following year. Main budget is one year layout income and expenditure of the country. And then medium-term expenditure framework, MTF. MTF is a plan of estimated revenue and expenditure which runs for the period of 3 years. So in here we anticipate or estimate the period of 3 years. The medium-term expenditure framework, MTF, requires that the state set the budget over the 3-year period consisting of rolling expenditure and revenue projections. The fiscal framework lays down the resources that are likely to be available to the government from taxes and other income during the new budget cycle. And then medium-term budget policy statement, which is MTBPS. MTBPS is presented yearly in the Parliament on the last week of October by the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance informed Parliament of any changes that have occurred since February, since the main budget. And then the MTBPS defines the perimeters for the following year's main budget. And then the Laffer curve, which is the curve that explains relationship between tax rates and tax revenues. And then if ever tax rate is too high, it reduces the level of income from taxpayers. Lower tax rate reduces tax revenues by the state or to the state. Reasonable tax rate maximizes government tax revenues. So government will be able to maximize tax revenues. This illustrates negative relationship between tax rate and tax revenues. The higher is the tax rate, the lower is government revenues, if ever tax rate is too high and unreasonable. And then this is the Laffer curve. So being explained between tax rate at 0 and tax rate at 40, Laffer curve is upward sloping. That is because tax rate is reasonable. So people are willing to pay tax and also businesses can pay tax. If tax rate is 10%, tax revenues is received is 60 million, indicated by letter A, which is here. And then which means that lower tax prevents state from maximizing its tax revenues. Tax rate at 40 results to the government maximizing its tax revenues at point B, which is up there. So this is known as the apex point, where the government can maximize or receive more revenues or higher revenues on the given tax rate. And then we continue. Apex means no extra revenues can be received above these 100 million. So anything above is impossible. Instead, with tax rate increasing further to 60%, the tax revenues will be declining, indicated by the downward sloping of the Laffer curve. The further increase in tax rate to 60% results to the decline in tax revenues to 60 million, indicated by point C. The Laffer curve turns down and slopes downward, indicating the effect of increased tax rate to the tax revenues. The tax evasion then starts to occur. Tax evasion and tax avoidance will then occur if ever tax rate is much unreasonable at 60% or 100%. Remember, tax evasion occurs when taxpayers do not display or disclose their sources of income, while tax avoidance occurs when taxpayers or companies or businesses use the strategy of giving back to the community or the society so that they can get tax benefits from the government. So tax evasion is illegal and tax avoidance is legal. Tax rate at 100% result to tax revenues received being 0, because no one will be willing to work if ever the whole amount they will receive will be going straight to the state or the government. So these are the macroeconomic essays according to our 2021 examination guidelines. Discuss markets in details. within the four-sector model. And then discuss in detail the new economic paradigm, explain smoothing business cycles. And then discuss in detail features underpinning forecasting. Discuss in detail main objective of the public sector in the economy. Discuss in detail the reasons for public sector failure, link them to the typical problem for experienced through public sector provision. Discuss in detail reasons for the international trade, supply reasons, and demand reasons. So these are our macroeconomic essays that you can expect in your upcoming examination that will be written on the 1st of June. So you can expect two essays within these 6 essays, so you can start preparing yourself. So essays, discussing detailed reasons for public sector failure, 26 marks. Management failure, we know apathy, bureaucracy, lack of motivation, politicians, structural weakness, special interest groups, which can be, if you want to remember easily, maybe I'll pass MAP, LP, WS or SS. So it's mnomic. So this is the essay example, discussing detailed reasons for public sector failure, 26 marks. How can the government improve service delivery in your community? 10 marks. So this is the main part, this is the additional part. We know that first we must introduce our essay. So how do you introduce your essay? You need to explain or describe what is meant by the public sector failure. So in definition here we said, public sector failure occurs when the government failed to manage the economy and the resources under its control optimally. Then you can provide any other response that is relevant to the public sector failure. That worth 2 marks. And then the main part. So we start with the management failure to explain what do you mean by management failure. Government departments are poorly managed due to bureaucracy, lack of leadership and training, as well as experience. Incompetent public officials inefficiently use allocated resources or budget to provide public goods. Management failure is a result of political deployment, nepotism, fraud, and corruption. Some public officials are deployed based on political exposure with paid qualifications, and the state takes time to track their merit. This means that they would be not efficient in their job, and then linked to problem of the public sector provision. Public funds management require principles of transparency, assessment, and social needs and accountability. So if everyone is given public funds, they cannot just spend on his or her own. There should be the part of the transparency. People should be informed about available funds and how they will be used, and also how they have been used. Also, accountability, officials should be held accountable on their expenditure or on their daily expenditure on the income. Management failure continues. Ignorance, applying conflicting policies, or getting the timing of policy changes wrong result management failure. If management have have personal and hidden agenda that benefit individuals rather than the society, which is rent seeking, the public sector fails because social welfare is compromised. And then bureaucracy. So public servants tend to be emphatic on obeying rules and regulations rather than providing public services. They ensure that rules of procedures are inflexible to complex to tamper with and that delays provision of public services within the society, and that leads to the inefficient provision of resources in the economy. Bureaucrats are insensitive to the needs of the public as they tend to be more aggressive when implementing policies. Bureaucrats can manipulate government policy in such a way that benefit themselves and at the expense of whom? At the expense of the society. For instance, a police personnel only attend cases with the case numbers, not random street reports. The apathy, ignorance, lack of commitment, and lack of social interest promotes inefficiency and rent seeking. Successful public production relies on long-term accountability. Accountability is the duty of an individual or organization to explain their decisions and actions and accept responsibility for their behavior. It is not easy to hold public sector accountable because of a huge workforce of the various departments. And then we continue with the apathy. Lack of accountability to inefficiency, corruption, and poor service delivery because these inefficiencies are not diagnosed. So in the developing countries, accountability often fails because citizens are voiceless. They don't simply make use of their own voices as voters. Apart is linked to lack of accountability and inefficient service delivery. Lack of motivation. Workers really receive incentive for successful service delivery. So if people are not well compensated, they will end up not being very effective. Public servants are really acknowledged, appreciated, and rewarded for their hard work and extra efforts. The public sector tends to be more emphatic on penalties for misconduct rather than setting principles that acknowledge extra efforts. This reduces the level of commitment and promotes self-interest, which has an effect of theft and corruption. So people end up compensating themselves by stealing from the government. Some departments manage to provide services under these conditions, but services remain limited, low in quality and high in cost. Politicians, and those who aim to be re-elected and who pay to vote maximizing strategies to secure or entertain their political positions. Such politicians have a short-term horizon, which is limited to the date of the next elections, meaning these people simply do what? They will be available before elections. After elections, they disappear. This means that they promote policies and spend money on projects as long as they can get votes in return. These policies might involve an inefficient allocation of resources. When politicians serve their own interests rather than that of the public, it promotes the culture of distrust and also illusionment linked to accountability. So there will be a disillusion within this kind of what we call politicians if ever they simply make use of their very own interest. So if ever politicians use their own interest to benefit, they will be available for voters, they will provide some gigs for them, then people will be able to vote. After that, they disappear. They will come back when it's time for next election. They will seek for election for being voted again. They will also again try to do what? To provide to the society, which will lead to inefficient provision of resources. And then special interest groups. Here we talk about those groups that are very much powerful to manipulate the government decision making. Unions and individuals who try to further their own interest by means of rent seeking. So these are powerful and influential groups which with a strength to manipulate government decisions to their advantage. So in this case, they always try to manipulate the government so that government can react on their very own advantage. They make use of laws, lobbying, bribes, kickbacks, and other favors to influence government officials to act in their interest. Special interest groups include the Association of Farmers, the Chamber of Commerce, trade unions, and politicians. So they are very much powerful to the sense that they can easily influence the government in terms of decision making because they have that power, which is politically and economically. Special interest group continues. They benefit through profitable contracts from the government, favorable regulations, direct subsidies, special tax treatment, and special import tariff or quotas. So they always benefit because they can simply manipulate or push the government to the limit to act at their advantage. Groups such as labor unions and business groups can also influence government to distribute resources in such a way that they benefit at the expense of the rest of the country. We call that the Pareto inefficiency. This results to the public resource being channeled to one group, which, while the majority remain unconsidered or compromised. Special interest groups are linked to efficiency as a problem in the public sector provision. And then structural weaknesses. The use of conflicting ideas and policies weakens framework of, affect the long-term plan for the government. If ever politicians are using conflicting ideas, one is doing this, one is doing this, one is decide to increase monetary policy or to be restrictive, one try to be very much expansionary without focusing on economic conditions. Structural failure in the economy result to government failure to achieve macroeconomic objectives. If ever there's a weak structure within the government will never achieve its own objectives. It is impossible to provide the needs of all unemployed and the poor people with limited resources being available in the economy. So some objectives might also work against each other. For example, when the government reaches good income too aggressively, economic growth and development could suffer in the long term. And then we continue with the structural weakness. For instance, we talk about Eskom is the only provider of electricity in South Africa. When load shedding occurs, it impacts on the efficiency of the entire economy. So whenever we come across load shedding, there will be inefficiency in the economy because business might not be able to produce and then markets might not be able to function. This is therefore a link to accountability, efficiency, and parastatal as problems of the public sector provision. And then additional part. The government can assess community needs to avoid wasteful spending in order to improve service delivery. Can also monitor ensuring that it monitors all projects that are within the society, ensure that they are in the good quality, because if there is no monitoring, there will be a poor service delivery. So monitoring team from the governance must be sent to communities to ensure the quality of service delivery. So that's the quality assurance. Government must fight corruption to ensure within municipalities to ensure efficient use of resources. So corruption must not occur within local, provincial, and national, so that there will be efficient use of resources. Municipal officials must be held accountable and regularly interact with communities. So people in those offices should be held accountable for their own action based on the income and expenditure. Also, they should be interacting with communities regularly so that they will be able to deliver what is desired within the society. We talk about the problem of assessing needs in there. The municipal budget must be transparent and to the community. So people should be informed within the communities about the budget that has been made available for them. Not only mayors and officials should know the budget, but people should be informed so that they can be able to develop the structure to say, how will this budget be spent to the society? So it is very much necessary for the government to ensure that transparency is there, because the part of principles of accountability. Remember, accountability go with two principles. It's what you call, it's transparency. People should be transparent enough, and then people should also be held accountable. They should be able to explain their own actions based on income and expenditure. And then conclusion. Remember, any other conclusion might be accepted if it's in the higher order and relevant, not repeating any information above. So the government aims at improving the functioning of and efficiency of the economy as a whole. So you can provide any other concluding remarks by ensuring that you don't repeat, but you are only critical. So the following are the at the economic dates for examination. So we'll talk about dates for the upcoming assessment, which is June, and then also dates for a preparatory examination, also including the final examination. So June examination, paper 1 will be written on the 1st of June 2022. The paper is 2 hours. Just to provide the scope, like I said before, the paper only consists of macroeconomics. What is that? In macroeconomics, you will be having the circular flow, business cycles, public sector, and the foreign exchange markets. Meaning, these 2 essays that will be there in section C will be coming from those topics. And then paper 2 will be written on the 21st of June 2022. And then it will also be 2 hours out of 150 marks. You need to keep the date. And then paper 2 consists of microeconomics. So here was a macroeconomics, and then here is a microeconomics. So ensure that you study according to the given information. So paper 2 consists of the microeconomics. That's when you study your markets that were covered in term 2. So study them thoroughly, and then the revision will be done in there as we will be preparing you for the paper 2 examination. And then the preparatory examination, which is the prelim. And this examination is already having some dates that are official. So the paper 1 of the preliminary examination in economics, we are writing paper 1 on the 8th of September. So your prelim paper 1 is 8th September. Keep the date, it's very important for you to prepare yourself. Remember, in here normally we come across all topics in here. So we'll be having macroeconomics and we'll be having your economic pursuit in this kind of the examination. And then your paper 2 will be written on the 20th of September. Your paper 2, 20th of September, consisting of microeconomics as well as contemporary economic issues, meaning the whole content will have been completed, so it will appear in your examination for the prelim. Ensure that you keep this date and prepare yourself accordingly. And the big fish and the big one, final examination for 2022. Already you have a date. The paper 1 will be written on the 1st of November. 1 November at 9 o'clock, you will be sitting, you will be starting actually your examination at 9 o'clock. So paper 1 November, 1st of November, it will be written. That is our paper 1. It will be having the macroeconomics as well as the economic pursuit. More information is still coming. There will be more revision on this so that you will be ready for examination. And then paper 2, the 8th of November. So 8th November, the time is 2 o'clock, meaning it's afternoon session. You will be writing your paper 2, which consists of microeconomics as well as the contemporary economic issues. So get yourself prepared as early as possible. And ensure that if you go to the prelim, you are ready for everything, so that after prelim, you keep on revising for the final examination. It is very important, because if you go to the prelim without being ready, you might be frustrated, because it does frustrate people. So get yourself prepared before prelim. After prelim, you will be just doing those corrections towards the final examination, because the 1st of November is on the way. But before that, ensure that June examination is considered. Remember, in June examination, I believe you have already been given the research project, which is the part of the SBA, out of 50 marks. It is very important. Your marks are very important. Each and every mark count. And ensure that you take nothing for granted. You underestimate nothing here, because when you get to submit your final marks, you find that some learners are not qualifying with really good marks, which make it difficult for them to achieve at the end of the year. So ensure that your year mark is good. Accumulate your marks along on each formal assessment that is given to you. It's very important. So these are the dates. Just to remind you, paper 1 for June examination is 1 June 2022, and then paper 2 is 21 June. And then the prelim, paper 1, 8 September, paper 2, 12 September. So we will be having more time to prepare here for your paper 2 after paper 1. And then final exam, we have your 1 November, which is paper 1, and then 8 November, which is paper 2. Bear in mind, paper 2 will be afternoon, and then your paper 1 will be in the morning at 9 o'clock. I believe our lesson ends here. I therefore thank you, and I hope as you view these lessons, they will have a great impact as you prepare for any upcoming assessment. Remember that this was more about reviewing what we have covered, also providing that critical revision in some aspects. Lessons are available. You need to check on your YouTube with the Pagama Research Development and check economics in there. You will come across our previous lessons. They are there, they've been presented. You can keep on reviewing them as you prepare for your upcoming examination. I thank you. Enjoy your preparation and enjoy your paper 1 that will be written on the 1st of June. Goodbye.